So I hope somebody sees this. I hope somebody clicks on it. It's late March 2022. Um I've been watching the news feed on this whole Ukraine bullshit the past several days. I mean, following this happened. This is before it happened. All right. And there's a messaging shift. We're not imposing sanctions to end the war. We're imposing sanctions to end Putin's regime. I can't count the number of videos I've watched on CNN in the past 2 days that have talked about the end of Putin, the end of Putin's regime. Are you fucking crazy? Are you insane? That's what you would have to be. My deepest, darkest fear is that this whole fucking thing was orchestrated by us. That we gaslit the crazy guy into attacking Ukraine so that when they fell within a few days, which is what I suspect we would have thought would have happened, they would be able to use this massive arsenal of man-portable, easily concealable, easily hideable, easily transportable, anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons in an insurgency war. We had hell in the Middle East with RPGs. Point, shoot, RPG. Imagine the hell we could have had if we would have had if we were facing javelins. In-laws. These Ukrainian semi-remote home-built missiles they've got. We would have lost a lot more people. And we know that. And it's really weird to me that those are the weapons we pumped in before the shooting started. Not, hey, Turkey, can you give up some S-400s? Hey, Poland, let's get their number of fighters up to where they can actually put up a real defense. We didn't do any of that before the shooting started when we should have been doing that. We filled the country to the brim. As many, thousands and thousands upon thousands of javelins, in-laws, stingers. If anybody isn't old enough to remember it, I'm not really old enough to remember it, but I'm old enough to remember reading about it having just happened, kind of like somebody in their teens today remembers the war in Iraq. The Stinger was instrumental in the Afghanis fighting off the Soviet invasion. The Soviets were using helicopters. They developed that doctrine from us. They were using helicopters in a counterinsurgency warfare, and they were using them with great effect. And the Stinger gave the insurgents a weapon that they could hit back with. And it can't be solely given the credit for getting rid of the Soviets, but it helped a lot. So here we are in Afghanistan 2.0 for the Russians. They're going to invade Ukraine and then have to fight an insurgency, a well-equipped insurgency, a well-trained, well-educated insurgency that is going to be just hell to occupy, which is Ukraine's greatest strength they have right now, because even if the Russians win this fight, they lose. They're going to cripple them with sanctions, and that's all fine, but all of this should be geared toward negotiating a peace and ending the war. Bring your troops out. Whatever we got to do, and it's probably not going to be a 100% solution for anybody. It's the Donbass region, the region in the east, that's probably gone. That's probably going to be its own little federations, read new Russian states. If there's a peace, I don't think they're going to back off of that. They're not giving Crimea back. It's not going to happen. But maybe we can get them to pull their troops back. Stop fighting for one. Pull their troops back. That's where the sanctions are supposed to be. That's where the messaging is. That's what they're for. Get out of Ukraine. Stop the war. Pull your troops back. We'll come off these sanctions. We'll let your economy breathe again. If you don't, we're going to strangle you. It's what we can do, because we can't risk a military confrontation with Russia because they have fucking nukes. This seems to be a hard concept for some of y'all to understand out in the world. They have the largest nuclear arsenal on Earth. Not us, them. It's pointed at us. Who knows how many weapons can actually be delivered? It's several hundred, probably way more than several hundred. It's probably around 1,500 warheads that can be delivered to the United States. They'll get here. This isn't North Korea. The Russians have been building delivery systems as long as we have. They got into space first. They had ballistic missiles first. They've been doing this since even before we were doing it. So there's no question as to whether or not the Russians can hit us. They can. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. We got a few interceptors to shoot down a rogue actor like North Korea's missile so that we don't have to go full nuclear in response. Because that's how important it is. We'd rather shoot down a missile coming in from North Korea than have to nuke them in response and risk initiating a nuclear war with China or Russia. It's dangerous. It's scary. It's the sum of all fears. It is the end of the world. And that's not being an alarmist. Nuclear war is an unthinkable thing. It is. I've been really into this shit. I learned a bit about it in the Air Force. I took what I learned and I expanded on that greatly. I've learned a lot about this. There's no winners. There's no one who even loses less. It's just the human race loses. Especially the Northern Hemisphere. The Northern Hemisphere, I mean, you're looking at an extinction level event. So that's what's at stake. That's what could happen. And that could happen from this. This is how almost every single scenario for World War III getting going and turning into a shooting war and ballistic missiles passing each other in space, they all begin like this, in some regional conflict where one side's supporting against the other, and then somebody makes a miscalculation, and boom. Russian missiles landed within 100 miles of Poland's border last night. Poland is a NATO member. They are a NATO member. An attack on one is an attack on all. If those missiles had missed, if those missiles hit into Poland, then we would have to respond. We would have to put weapons down in Russia and maybe, or Belarus, probably in Belarus. Maybe it could stop there. Maybe we could hit Belarus and hit a couple of sites and be like, all right, kind of like we did with Iran a few years ago. Remember when we allowed Iran to rain ballistic missiles down on one of our air bases because we had killed one of their generals, and that was good, that was cool, and we kind of stopped it, and publicly we stopped it. There was a little bit more that happened. But it kind of got turned off. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. And them shutting down the Strait of Hormuz would have caused so much damage that it wasn't worth going to war in 2020. Russia, I don't even know the mathematical numbers. We'll say thousands of times. They can do thousands of times more damage to us than Iran could ever have. We won't be worried about oil getting into America because there probably won't be much of an America left for it to get into. A whole bunch of people are going to die in the bombings. There's, 1,000 bombs that are 50 times as powerful as the bomb that hit Hiroshima to 100 times as powerful as the bomb that hit Hiroshima, raining from the skies on every major military target and probably every major city. Divide up 1,000 warheads across an American map and figure out what's left. And then out of every one of those, you're going to have swaths of the country that are covered in fallout. Y'all, if you don't understand how scary the fallout is, Your house is not just stay inside. You'll be inside. You won't be able to go outside for at least a month. But if you just live in a house, the gamma radiation coming off that fallout will come right through the walls and it'll kill everyone in your house. You'll all die of radiation poisoning slowly. And even if you live, agriculture's done. The transportation, done. I know that suffers out there that are, oh God, what did I do? What did I do? How do I undo this? Yeah, touch something. I hate cell phones. I know there's preppers out there that, yeah, sure, y'all have got enough supplies. How about afterwards? What are you going to do with all the alpha emitters in the soils? Which would scrape off. They look at Chernobyl. Every bomb is going to release a Chernobyl amount of fallout onto the ground. You're going to have a Chernobyl-style exclusion dome for every single impact, especially any ground burst. Across Europe and the United States, it's hell. It's hell. It's unthinkable. They will be unusable as countries when it is over. And if you're lucky, maybe you'll make it to the southern hemisphere, but most people probably not. I think the latest estimates I've heard are like at least 100 million dead in America. That's 1/3 of the fucking population. There are no words. I don't have anything to express it. So, back to regime change. We're going to talk about regime change and Putin's got to go. It's like Assad's got to go. And we're going to arm the Ukrainians and they're going to fight and we're going to crush him with sanctions until the Russian people rise up and throw Putin out. And that's the goal. I thought the goal was for Ukraine to be free. I thought the goal was to provide the Ukrainian military with the means to defend themselves. I thought the goal was for the Russians to leave Ukraine. Because if the goal is to overthrow Putin, then we want the Russians in Ukraine. So that the resistance in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, is producing lots of dead Russians and lots of pissed off Russian families. Want to know why their sons or daughters had to die on Ukrainian soil fighting fellow Slavs. And if the goal is to get rid of Putin, then that is what we would want, is for that war to just continue, like the war in Syria continued, like the war in Ukraine had continued, to just go on and on and on and on and on, while crushing their economy, until eventually people in Putin's government, people in Russia get fucking fed up with it and get rid of him so that they can get the sanctions lifted and get out. And that all sounds well and good, but Putin is a dictator. Putin does have the big red button, guys. There's not really a button. It's not really red. But it doesn't matter. If I ever become president, I'm going to have a big red button. It's going to be an easy button. That was easy. But it doesn't really fucking matter. Because he can live that order like that. His nuclear forces are on probably our equivalent of DEFCON 3, maybe DEFCON 2. It's close to nuclear war. They're in the same basic alert level our forces were in during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Right now. They're right there right now. Which means there's even more missiles have been deployed in the field than the normal alert ones. And they're all pointed at us in some cities in Europe. And he can give that order himself. Will it be followed by his military? I don't want to gamble that it won't be. Would our order be followed by our military? I dare say we train for that to be the eventuality, yes. If he sees his grip on power slip, if he knows that it's the end for him, particularly if he's going to be hauled out, extradited, and tried for war crimes and God knows what, executed, put in prison for the rest of his life. If it's over, he's a narcissist. He's a megalomaniac. And if it's over, he's not going to leave a legacy. He's not giving power to somebody who is going to take Russia in a direction he wants. He's getting ousted in a coup. Or he could be. It's slipping. You don't think he might just press that fucking easy button? You want to gamble on it? Your kids' lives? Your grandkids' lives? Because that's whose fucking lives we're gambling with. I've gambled my own life. When they were talking about who had bigger buttons in 2018, I was fucking there. They pulled us all in a fucking room, and they told us this war was going to happen. They told us that we were never going home again to get our affairs in order. They told us that before we fucking left. I've gambled my fucking life. When those missiles flew in fucking Iran, I was fucking there. I've gambled my life. How many of you can say the same? But I would not gamble my fucking child's life. And that's what's being gambled right now. All of it. There's no over there in a nuclear war. It comes right here in a way that the world has literally never seen. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were teeny tiny little bombs that we airbursted. These are not. Over 2 cities. 2. It was a disaster. It was horrific. It was a humanitarian crisis on a scale that had never been seen. But it was 2 bombs. They were teeny tiny, and we airbursted them the nicest way you could possibly airburst a nuclear weapon. This will not be that. These bombs will be 50 to 100 times as powerful. They will rain from the skies on missiles with less than 10 minutes warning. And by the time we know it's coming, it'll probably be less than 4 or 5 minutes warning. They will air burst. They will ground burst. They will... Ground burst is bad because the neutron radiation, I'm not a nuclear physicist. My understanding is the neutron radiation that's being emitted, the neutrons being bombarded during the fissioning process of the bomb, is what can transmute elements into isotopes that give off radiation. So anything inside that fireball, anything that's absorbing that neutron radiation can then become radioactive itself. Ground burst, you pick up a whole bunch of soil and debris and whatever the fuck that fireball has, and you throw all that shit into the air, and it's all radioactive, and it all rains back down. An air burst, you're not throwing as much shit into the air that's radioactive and then comes back down. So it's going to be air bursts, it's going to be ground bursts, it's going to be cities on fire. In not a city, there's no response. There's no... Look at how hard it was to even handle Katrina. This is a disaster 10 times worse than that, playing out across every major city in the United States and a lot of the secondary cities that happen to house military targets. And if we keep pushing this narrative that our goal is to oust Putin, and it looks like that goal might happen, you don't think he might decide to ratchet this thing up? I'm sure he'll saber rattle a little harder, but at some point, there's a possibility for someone to make a miscalculation. Our goal should be to end the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That's it. That's all. That's the only goal we should have. And if Russia ends that invasion, if peace can be achieved between the Ukrainians and the Russians, then we need to honor that peace. Yes, be tough and stand up to Putin, but you need to understand this guy's crazy, and he's got the ability to kill your grandkids. Your kids. Your grandkids, your kids, yourself, your wife, your brother, your sister, your dog, your cat. Any fucking thing you care about, he can kill it. And he can kill it with one order.